In a world teetering on the edge of certain annihilation, one corporation promised hope, shelter, and safety. But behind the cheery mascot and slick marketing, Vault-Tec was not what it seemed. Vault-Tec Corporation, later known as Vault-Tec Industries, emerged in the early 21st century as a prominent American defense contractor. With global tensions rising, their purpose was seemingly noble: to design and construct underground shelters that could withstand nuclear war. The initiative was part of Project Safehouse, officially launched in 2054. The U.S. government entrusted Vault-Tec with billions in funding to create a network of 122 vaults across the country. But Vault-Tec wasn't just building bunkers. They were building control mechanisms. From the start, Vault-Tec's operations were shrouded in an ominous secrecy. Their contracts came with immunity from oversight, their budgets bloated, and their ambitions far bigger than just the survival of the American people. Vault-Tec's public image was all smiles, bright colors, hopeful mascots, a future underground, free of radiation and war. But behind the optimistic facade, most vaults were never meant to save anyone. Only 17 vaults were actual control vaults, designed to genuinely preserve life. The remaining 100 plus? A base for twisted experiments in social engineering. Why? To gather data. Vault-Tec, often under the control or influence of the pre-war shadow government known as the Enclave, used the vaults to observe how humans might behave in isolation, fear, and madness. They weren't building a future. They were engineering one. Today, we are going to take an in-depth look at a few of Vault-Tec's most horrifying experiments.
But before that, I would really appreciate it if you could show help support Vintage Point by liking our video and leaving a comment below on your favorite vault from the series. If you feel like supporting us further than that, or becoming a bigger part of our community, then I'd appreciate it if you could check us out on Patreon, where every member gets early access to our content, or join our communities on Discord and Reddit. Thank you all again. Vault 11. In the dark corners of the Mojave Wasteland lies a forgotten vault. Sealed beneath sand and silence, it was once home to dozens of men and women seeking shelter from nuclear war. Instead, they found a moral test that tore them apart. This is the story of Vault 11, and the horrific experiment that turned a community into executioners. Vault 11 was one of 122 underground shelters built by Vault-Tec as part of Project Safehouse. Located in the Mojave Desert, the vault was fully stocked, fully staffed, and seemingly safe. But from the moment the doors closed, the residents were confronted with a singular, chilling directive. In order to ensure the continued operation of the vault, one person must be chosen to sacrifice themselves each year. If no selection is made, the entire population will be terminated. The experiment was simple and cruel. Every year, the residents were required to vote for one of their own to die. That person would be taken to a sacrificial chamber, and the vault would continue functioning. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Vault-Tec designed this system to observe how far people would go when forced to choose between personal morality and collective survival. Over time, the elections became corrupt. Political factions formed. People ran campaigns not to be elected, but to avoid being chosen. Some manipulated, some bribed, some outright murdered rivals. The vault descended into chaos. The original democratic process degraded into tyranny, blackmail, and assassination. Several overseers used their power to exempt themselves from the vote, further destabilizing trust. Eventually, a rebellion broke out. The residents realized they had become little more than executioners, participating in a cycle of ritualized murder, for a system they didn't understand. The final overseer was executed, the final vote was cast, and the last 5 survivors, overwhelmed by guilt and grief, made a decision to refuse the next sacrifice. And then they learned the truth. It was a lie, a test, a moral trap. If at any point the residents refused to comply, if they chose compassion over fear, the vault would have been opened. But instead, dozens of people died over decades for nothing. Vault 11 is now a tomb, a relic, a monument to fear, to cowardice, and to the consequences of obedience without question. No raiders or ghouls haunt its halls, only silence, and the echo of voices long gone. Vault-Tec got what it wanted, data, but at what cost? In Vault 11, the greatest danger wasn't radiation, starvation, or monsters. It was the fear of each other, and the lie that one life must be sacrificed to save the rest. Buried beneath a garage in the capital wasteland lies one of Vault-Tec's most secret and insidious projects. A vault where time has stopped, and the human mind has become a playground of cruelty. This is the story of Vault 112, a place where paradise was promised, but damnation was delivered. Vault 112 was never meant to look like the others. Hidden beneath Smith Casey's garage, it wasn't built for hundreds. It was small, exclusive, an elite refuge with just 85 pods. From the outside, it appeared abandoned. But deep underground, 84 residents remained alive, in a way. The true heart of Vault 112 was not its hallways, but its simulation, a fully immersive, virtual reality known as Tranquility Lane. A white picket utopia, perfect lawns, smiling neighbors, nostalgia in every frame. But this wasn't a simulation for comfort. It was a prison. And its warden was a man named Dr. Stanislaus Braun. Dr. Braun was a Vault-Tec scientist, brilliant, egotistical, and utterly unhinged. Vault 112 was his private experiment. The residents weren't test subjects. They were toys. Inside Tranquility Lane, Braun assumed the role of a little girl named Betty, a twisted puppet master who subjected the residents to cruel and imaginative torments, not because he had to, but because he could. He forced them to betray each other, kill their neighbors, torture their own families, over and over, for centuries. Vault 112's residents weren't aging. Their bodies were sustained by machines while their minds were trapped in Braun's simulation, locked in an endless loop of horror. There was no escape. Death in the simulation didn't free them, it reset them. Their memories, their identities, erased and rewritten for the next scenario. Braun was playing God, and the only rule was that there were no rules. When the lone wanderer enters Vault 112 in search of their father, the illusion is broken. Suddenly, Braun's perfect world has a new variable: you. The player is given the same sadistic tasks, but there is another way, one that Braun never anticipated. By accessing the hidden Chinese invasion program, the player can trigger a failsafe, an alternate simulation in which communist soldiers invade and slaughter the residents, effectively ending their torment. Mercy through destruction. Vault 112 isn't about physical suffering. It's about power, control, the erasure of identity. It asks a terrifying question. What happens when a single man, free of consequence, is given godlike control over the minds of others? The simulation was a paradise on the surface, but a prison underneath. And its designer wasn't testing technology. He was testing how far he could go before anyone stopped him. Vault 112 is a chilling reminder that the worst monsters in the Fallout universe aren't always super mutants or raiders. Sometimes they're scientists, smiling, curious, alone. Vault 95. Fallout's world is filled with monsters. Ghouls, mutants, raiders. But sometimes the greatest cruelty doesn't come from war, but from design. Vault-Tec built sanctuaries beneath the surface, but not all were meant to save. Some were meant to break. This is the story of Vault 95, and the cruelest relapse ever engineered. Vault 95 was presented as a sanctuary, a place of second chances. Specifically designed for people struggling with drug addiction, its stated purpose was rehabilitation. The residents were promised care, community, and time. Time to recover, together, away from the temptations of the old world. For 5 years, that promise was kept. The vault flourished. Residents held support meetings, formed bonds, and helped each other heal. It worked. Then came the 6th year. Without warning, Vault-Tec operatives activated the true nature of the experiment. A hidden cache of powerful chems, Psycho, Jet, Med-X, and more, was revealed to the community. It wasn't an accident. It was the point. The scientists wanted to study relapse. How would former addicts react if their greatest temptations were suddenly within reach again? Would they resist? Would they spiral? Would they tear each other apart? Vault 95 didn't just fail. It imploded. Once the chems were introduced, the vault fell into a state of collapse. Some residents relapsed. Others tried to intervene and died for it. What had once been a place of healing became a slaughterhouse. Vault-Tec had taken the most vulnerable people imaginable, those already fighting for control over their lives, and fed them to their worst demons. By the time the sole survivor finds Vault 95 in Fallout 4, it's no longer a rehab center. It's a fortress, occupied by a ruthless mercenary group called the Gunners.
The irony is bitter. A vault built for healing now serves as a hub for violence and drug trafficking. It's as if Vault-Tec's nightmare vision for the facility never really ended. It just changed uniforms. Vault 95's legacy becomes deeply personal if you travel there with Kate, a former cage fighter and recovering chem addict. She sees the vault not just as a place of horror, but as a metaphor, a reflection of her own struggle. She begs you to take her there, hoping she'll find peace by facing the source of her pain. What she finds is death, decay, and a cruel reminder that healing, real healing, is never engineered. Vault 95 isn't just horrifying because of what happened, it's horrifying because of what it says. Vault-Tec didn't just want to study addiction, they wanted to test the boundaries of human weakness. They didn't care about healing, they cared about data. They weren't helping people, they were waiting for them to fall apart. Vault 95 was never about hope, it was about control. Vault 12. Most vaults were designed to shelter people from the apocalypse. Vault 12 was not one of them. In the heart of Bakersfield, California, Vault-Tec built a door that was never meant to close, and the price of that design decision was everything. Located beneath the city of Bakersfield, Vault 12 appeared normal. It had all the hallmarks of a standard shelter: living quarters, food stores, a functioning overseer system. But its most critical feature, its vault door, was intentionally designed not to seal properly. When the bombs dropped in 2077, the door failed to close. Radiation seeped in, slowly and relentlessly, poisoning the residents. The experiment? Observe the long-term effects of sustained radiation exposure on human beings in a controlled environment. The result? The creation of the first generation of ghouls, twisted, irradiated survivors caught between life and death. Some retained their minds and formed a new community. Others succumbed to madness, becoming feral, aggressive, mindless remnants of the people they once were. By the time the events of Fallout 1 unfold, Vault 12 has long since become Necropolis, a city of the dead. Ghouls wander the ruins, hiding from scavengers and surface dwellers. They are survivors, but not in any way Vault-Tec intended or cared about.
Cut off from resources, denied any aid, and reviled by outsiders, the ghouls of Necropolis became living reminders of Vault-Tec's inhuman experiments. Vault 12 represents one of the core themes of the Fallout universe, the betrayal of trust. Citizens believed they were entering a sanctuary. What they entered was a petri dish. Vault-Tec didn't just let them die, they let them change, painfully, forever. And for what? Scientific curiosity? Military application? The pursuit of knowledge at the cost of countless lives. Vault 12 asks an uncomfortable question. If survival means becoming something inhuman, is it worth it? The ghouls of Vault 12 didn't all disappear. Some became wanderers. Others, like Jason Bright, went on to form cults and philosophies around mutation, believing their condition to be divine. But most would spend their lives either hiding or fighting for recognition in a world that saw them as monsters. Vault 12 wasn't breached. It wasn't overrun. It was designed to fail. Every life lost, every ghoul created, it all happened according to plan. In Fallout's world, the apocalypse didn't just come from the bombs. It came from the clipboards, the schematics, and the men in suits who thought survival was something to be measured, not earned. Vault-Tec promised safety. Vault 12 delivered mutation. Vault 87. In the ruins of the capital wasteland, buried deep beneath mountains of rock and radiation, lies one of the darkest chapters in Vault-Tec's long history of cruelty. This is the story of Vault 87, a place where science, secrecy, and suffering collided to create monsters. Like many other vaults across America, Vault 87 was part of a vast social experiment conducted by Vault-Tec, a corporation with government backing and no ethical oversight. But what sets Vault 87 apart is the nature of its experiment. The Forced Evolutionary Virus. The Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, was first developed by West-Tec before the Great War. Its original goal? To create super soldiers. What it actually did was far more terrifying. It twisted human DNA, enhancing strength and resilience, but at the cost of sanity, identity, and humanity. In Vault 87, scientists continued FEV research, turning unwilling vault dwellers into test subjects. Men, women, even children, none were spared. Over time, these experiments gave rise to the supermutants of the capital wasteland. Unlike other strains of FEV, the one used in Vault 87 was highly unstable. Nearly all test subjects lost cognitive function, turning into aggressive, feral monsters. But the virus was undeniably effective. Supermutants born in Vault 87 are stronger, faster, and much like their Western cousins, sterile. Unable to reproduce biologically, they propagate by abducting humans and forcibly exposing them to FEV, ensuring a constant supply of new mutations. This is why supermutants in the capital wasteland are so numerous. Vault 87 isn't just their origin, it's their factory. By the time the lone wanderer arrives, the vault is long lost to the world. Its main entrance is inaccessible due to lethal radiation. The only way in is through Murder Pass, an appropriately named cavern beneath Little Lamplight, guarded by children who barely know why they fear what lies beyond. Inside, the vault is a nightmare. Hallways twisted by time and violence. Mutant patrols at every turn. The remnants of human experimentation are littered throughout. It's not just a dungeon. It's a graveyard of human ambition. But even in a place like Vault 87, there's a glimmer of hope. One test subject, known only as Fox, retained his intelligence. A rare anomaly among the mindless horde.
Fawkes becomes a potential companion and a symbol of what could have been. He's articulate, principled, and deeply aware of his condition. He doesn't just contrast with the other mutants, he critiques them. Through him, we see the tragedy of Vault-87 in full, not just what was lost, but what was possible. Fawkes proves that the FEV could have created protectors. Instead, it created predators. Vault-87 didn't just birth the Capital Wasteland's supermutants, it changed the course of history. Its twisted legacy becomes a tool for the Enclave, a threat to the Brotherhood of Steel, and a test for the Lone Wanderer. It's easy to see Vault-87 as just another dungeon, but it's more than that. It's a warning, a testament to what happens when science loses its soul, and power becomes the end, not the means. In the end, Vault-87 isn't just where monsters were made. It's where humanity was lost, and, in rare moments, found again. Vault 108. This is Vault 108, one of the most twisted social experiments in the Fallout universe. And unlike some of Vault-Tec's more controlled disasters, this one went completely off the rails. Fast. Vault 108 was built near the ruins of Washington, D.C., and like many Vault-Tec facilities, it was never meant to preserve humanity, but to test it. On paper, it looks like just another Fallout shelter, but underneath, it was a powder keg. The residents were promised safety. In reality, they were subjects in a deeply flawed and frankly insane experiment. Vault 108 had 3 critical design flaws, all intentional. First, the Overseer was diagnosed with a terminal illness before the vault was even sealed. He was only expected to live 40 months. Second, there was no clear succession plan. Leadership was destined to collapse. Third, the vault had a cloning lab. Because what could possibly go wrong? That's right. Vault-Tec installed a full genetic replication facility and gave zero guidance on how or why to use it. But the real kicker? The only person ever cloned was a guy named Gary. Gary was a regular Vault resident, until someone decided to clone him. Again, and again, and again. The result? A vault crawling with dozens of identical, mentally unstable clones who can only say one word: Gary. These clones aren't friendly. They're aggressive, territorial, and seem to have formed a sort of cult of themselves. It's unclear what triggered their descent into madness. A side effect of the cloning process? Isolation? Or was it Vault-Tec's plan all along? The residents stood no chance. Without a leader, and with the cloning lab producing unstable copies of one man, society collapsed into chaos. By the time the Lone Wanderer arrives in Fallout 3, the Vault is a tomb, inhabited only by the Garys. Vault 108 remains one of the most infamous vaults in the franchise. It's inspired memes, mods, and fan theories. Some even speculate that Gary was never a person at all, just a codename for a failed experiment gone rogue. And if you pay attention in Fallout 3, you'll find Gary 23 being experimented on in Vault 87, the very place that created the supermutants. Coincidence? Or was Gary part of something bigger? Vault 108 stands as a cautionary tale, not just about cloning, but about what happens when power goes unchecked, and science forgets its humanity. Vault 106. Vault 106 doesn't welcome you like the others. The moment you step inside, the world turns wrong. Everything is bathed in an eerie blue light, and you feel it, not just see it, that something is deeply broken here. There are no friendly faces, no survivors, only echoes, shadows, and hallucinations. Like most vaults, 106 was never about protection. Vault-Tec had a different plan, a darker one. Just 10 days after the vault sealed, the air filtration systems began releasing a steady flow of psychoactive drugs directly into the ventilation system. The residents never stood a chance. There are no detailed logs of what followed, but from the remains, we can piece it together.
Staff turned violent. Paranoia set in. Reality distorted. Allies became threats. Friends became monsters. The drugs warped their minds until they couldn't tell real from unreal. And in that madness, they destroyed each other.
When you explore Vault 106 in Fallout 3, you're not alone. Some of the residents are still alive, if you can call it that. They don't talk. They don't reason. They attack on sight, screaming, raving, trapped in a psychotic fog. And then, it happens to you. You start seeing things that aren't there, hearing voices. You can't trust your senses. And that was the experiment. So, what was Vault-Tec trying to learn? Could humans function under the influence of psychoactive drugs indefinitely? Would their minds adapt or collapse? How long could madness be contained in a sealed environment? Vault 106 doesn't offer a boss fight. There's no grand reveal, no survivor to rescue. Only silence, only decay. It's one of the most disturbing vaults in Fallout. Not because of what you see, but because of what you feel. That disorienting sense of dread, the creeping suspicion that your mind may not be your own. In the world of Fallout, the bombs weren't the only thing that shattered humanity. Sometimes, the greatest threats were the ones behind the vault door. And that's the video. Thank you all again for watching, and if you feel like supporting Vintage Point further, then make sure to like and comment, check out our Patreon, or join our community on Discord and Reddit. Thank you all so much for the support.